In a quiet American town, two sisters with a mysterious past sought peace. They had left behind a life most couldn't imagine, trading chaos for the hope of a fresh start. But when a ruthless biker gang set their sights on them, everything changed. At a small diner on the outskirts of Chicago, Emma and Sophia Carter sat in a corner booth, enjoying their meal. They were new to town, just two strangers looking to settle in. Emma, the older sister, carried a quiet strength in her worn leather jacket, her sharp green eyes always scanning, always aware. Beside her, Sophia, younger but equally formidable, carried herself with an air of relaxed confidence, her white hoodie contrasting against her dark hair. To the other diners, they were just another pair of newcomers, but beneath their calm exteriors lay a history few could comprehend, one they had every intention of leaving behind. The hum of conversation and the clink of silverware against plates filled the warm air. It was a night like any other, until the front door swung open with force. The sudden noise silenced the room. 5 bikers strode in, their presence heavy, their movements deliberate. At their center was Logan Harrington, a towering figure with a smirk that promised nothing but trouble. A Confederate flag tattoo stretched across his forearm, a not-so-subtle warning of the kind of man he was. His cold, calculating eyes swept across the diner before locking onto Emma and Sophia. "Well, well," Logan drawled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look what we have here." The diner's atmosphere shifted. The waitress froze mid-step, gripping the coffee pot with whitening knuckles. A man at the counter slowly lowered his fork, glancing toward the sisters with quiet apprehension. The air was thick with an unspoken understanding. Trouble had arrived. Before we dive deeper into this intense story, we want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to stand your ground, to defend yourself or someone you love? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to keep stories like this alive. The diner had a warmth to it, the kind that made it feel like a refuge from the cold Chicago night. A neon sign hummed outside, casting a soft red glow over the rain-slicked pavement. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon lingered in the air, mingling with the quiet hum of conversation. The booths were filled with weary truckers, late-night regulars, and a few young couples sharing whispered conversations over half-eaten plates of pie. It was a place where people could disappear into their own worlds, unnoticed and undisturbed. In the farthest booth, against the window streaked with condensation, sat Emma and Sophia Carter. Emma, 32, carried the weight of experience in her sharp green eyes, her every movement measured and deliberate. She had the look of someone who had seen more than her share of hardship, though she rarely spoke of it. Sophia, 5 years younger, was her counterbalance, livelier, more expressive, but no less disciplined. She had a quick smile and an easy charm, but beneath it lay the same hardened instincts that had kept them both alive. The sisters had arrived in Chicago only a few weeks prior, hoping to carve out a semblance of normalcy after years spent moving from place to place. Their past, one of rigid discipline and relentless training, had shaped them into something more than ordinary, but they longed for the illusion of it. Sophia had taken up a job at a small bookstore a few blocks away, stacking shelves and recommending novels she'd never have had time to read in her former life. Emma, ever the strategist, had chosen a more discreet line of work, consulting for private security firms when the need arose. They didn't talk much about what they had left behind, but the unspoken understanding remained. This was a new beginning, if they could make it one. The soft chime of the diner's entrance bell barely registered in the noise of clinking dishes and murmured conversation, but the moment the 5 men walked in, the air changed. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing people feared them. Logan Harrington led the way, his heavy boots thudding against the linoleum floor. He was a man who reveled in intimidation, his frame broad and powerful, draped in a leather vest emblazoned with the snarling wolf emblem of his gang. His jet-black hair was cropped short, a scar running from his temple down to his jaw, a permanent reminder of battles fought and won. The Confederate flag inked across his forearm was more than just a symbol. It was a declaration. His crew fanned out behind him, each a different shade of menace. There was Boone, the wiry one with hollowed-out cheeks and a nervous energy that made him twitchy, like a snake coiled and ready to strike. Next to him, Tank, a name earned for his sheer size, stood with his arms crossed over his chest, a slab of muscle wrapped in faded denim. Beside him, Colt, a sharp-featured man with a perpetual smirk, absent-mindedly flicked a switchblade open and closed. Rounding out the group was Red, a man with eyes too cold for someone so young, his knuckles tattooed with cryptic symbols, his silence more unsettling than words. Logan's gaze swept the room, assessing, searching. He wasn't just here for a meal. He was here to be seen, to remind this small pocket of the city who held the power. His smirk widened when his eyes landed on Emma and Sophia. He had seen a lot of people pass through town, but these two were different. They carried themselves too well, their movements too smooth, too practiced. They weren't just passing through. They were something else. And Logan didn't like unknowns. "Ladies," he said, his voice a slow drawl as he approached their booth. "Haven't seen you around before." The diner had gone silent, all eyes shifting toward the unfolding scene. The waitress at the counter clutched the handle of the coffee pot, frozen in place. A man at a nearby table shifted uncomfortably, looking away. Nobody wanted trouble, but trouble had arrived. Logan leaned against the booth, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the table. His smirk deepened as he studied the sisters, his eyes lingering just a little too long, searching for weakness. Emma met his gaze head-on, her expression unreadable, her body still. Sophia, beside her, remained casual, her fingers idly tracing the rim of her coffee cup. But there was a sharpness to her posture, an alertness that only a few would notice. "Didn't catch your names," Logan said, his voice carrying that forced friendliness that often preceded trouble. "What brings you to our little corner of the world?" Emma let the question hang in the air for a moment, measuring his intent. "Just passing through," she finally replied, her voice steady, neutral. "That's so." Logan tilted his head slightly, glancing between the two of them. "See, folks who are just passing through don't usually carry themselves like you do." He gestured vaguely, his meaning clear. "You've got a way about you. Makes a man wonder." Sophia exhaled a quiet chuckle, shaking her head. "We get that a lot. Some people just read too much into things." Logan mused, leaning in slightly. "See, I'm not much of a reader. More of a hands-on type of guy." His fingers tapped against the tabletop in an uneven rhythm, deliberate, calculated. The air in the diner grew heavier with each passing second. Behind the counter, the waitress had gone pale, her hands tightening around the coffee pot. A middle-aged man sitting at the counter pushed his plate away and glanced toward the exit. The old couple in the corner stopped their conversation entirely, their eyes darting between Logan and the sisters. The tension in the room thickened like a storm on the horizon. Emma remained unmoved, her fingers resting lightly on the table's edge, but her muscles were poised, ready. Sophia shifted ever so slightly, a movement so small it would be imperceptible to most. But Logan wasn't most. His smirk twitched at the corner, as if he'd confirmed something for himself. "I'd hate to think you were being rude," he continued. "Not introducing yourselves proper-like. Around here, it's good manners to know who you're sitting next to." Sophia finally looked up from her coffee, offering Logan a polite but pointed smile. "It's also good manners to leave people alone when they're just trying to have a meal." Logan laughed, a low, rumbling sound that sent a shiver down the waitress's spine. "You've got some bite," he said, his amusement barely masking the challenge behind his words. "I like that." One of Logan's men, the wiry one with hollowed-out cheeks, took a step closer. His fingers twitched like he was itching for a reason to act. The larger one, Tank, cracked his knuckles, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Emma sighed, shifting slightly in her seat. "If you're looking for trouble," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "you won't like where it leads." Logan studied her, that smirk still in place, but his eyes colder now. "That a threat?" "Just a fact." The silence that followed was oppressive. The waitress looked like she was debating whether to run or call the cops. The man at the counter had already dropped a few bills and was making his way toward the door, moving as quietly as he could. A younger woman, seated near the window, clutched her purse tightly, her breathing shallow. Logan drummed his fingers against the table once more, considering. Finally, he exhaled through his nose and stood up. "Well, ladies," he drawled, stepping back, "it's been a pleasure." He looked over his shoulder at his crew, jerking his chin toward the exit. "Let's go." The bikers hesitated, but Logan's authority held. One by one, they turned and followed him out, the door swinging shut behind them. The sound of their motorcycles revving up echoed through the diner before they finally roared off into the night. Inside, the tension lingered. The waitress finally set the coffee pot down, her hands shaking. "You two okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, but Sophia only smirked, reaching for her fork. "Well, that was fun," she muttered, taking a bite of her now-cold pie. The waitress blinked at them, something new in her expression, something that wasn't just fear. It was curiosity, maybe even respect. She had the same thought that Logan had, the same realization. These two weren't ordinary at all. The diner's door had barely swung shut when Logan stopped in his tracks outside, jaw clenched. The rumble of the bikes idling on the curb filled the quiet night air. But inside him, something burned hotter than the engines. That woman, Emma. She had looked him straight in the eye without an ounce of fear. He didn't like that, and he sure as hell wasn't going to let it slide. He turned sharply to his crew. "We're not done here." Tank grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Didn't think so." Without another word, they turned back toward the diner. Logan led the way, throwing the door open so hard it smacked against the wall. Every conversation inside died instantly. The few remaining customers shrank in their seats. The waitress gasped, stepping back, clutching the counter for support. Emma and Sophia had barely touched their food. They didn't even look surprised. "You know," Logan said, voice dripping with mockery, "I was feeling real charitable, letting you two go without a lesson. But I think I changed my mind." Sophia sighed dramatically, setting her fork down. "And here I was hoping to finish my pie. You two think you're tough, huh?" Logan stepped closer, hands flexing at his sides. "Got some kind of death wish?" Emma's gaze remained steady. "You don't want to do this." Logan scoffed. "Yeah, and why's that?" Emma exchanged a glance with Sophia, the kind only siblings could understand. No words were needed. They had fought side by side before, and they would do it again. Logan lunged first. Before his hand could reach Emma, she sidestepped effortlessly, twisting his arm behind his back in a single smooth motion. The movement was so fast, so precise, that he barely had time to react before his knee buckled. Tank charged toward Sophia, but she was faster. She ducked under his swinging fist and delivered a swift elbow to his ribs. The impact sent him stumbling back, gasping for air. The diner erupted into chaos. Customers scrambled out of their seats, some bolting for the door, others too stunned to move. The waitress crouched behind the counter, her wide eyes peeking over the edge as dishes crashed around her. Boone, the wiry one, pulled a knife, his grin all teeth. "Bad move, sweetheart." Sophia only smirked. In a blur, she caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted it hard, and forced the blade from his grasp. She followed it up with a sharp kick to the back of his knee, sending him sprawling. Logan growled, using his free arm to swing at Emma. She let go, allowing him just enough movement to think he was regaining control, before she delivered a perfectly timed strike to his sternum. He doubled over, gasping, the air knocked clean from his lungs. Tank roared, recovered now, and grabbed a chair, lifting it high. But before he could swing, Sophia was already moving. She ducked under the arc of the attack, swept his legs out from under him, and sent him crashing onto a table, splintering it in two. The remaining customers who had stayed were now standing in frozen shock. This wasn't just a simple bar fight. The way these two women moved, the efficiency, the precision, it was something else entirely. Colt, the one with the switchblade, hesitated, his grip tightening. "Who the hell are you?" Emma exhaled, rolling her shoulders. "Just two women trying to have dinner." Colt took one more look at Logan, now struggling to get to his feet, and decided against pushing his luck. Without a word, he turned and bolted out the door, disappearing into the night. Boone groaned from the floor, holding his wrist. "Boss!" Logan glared at the sisters, his breath ragged, his pride shattered. "This ain't over." Sophia grinned. "Oh, I think it is." The flashing of red and blue lights outside said she was right. The flashing lights of police cruisers cast blue and red hues across the rain-slicked pavement as officers poured into the diner. The air still crackled with tension, the scent of overturned coffee and shattered glass mixing with the metallic tang of adrenaline. Patrons pressed themselves against the walls, some whispering frantically, others frozen in stunned silence. "Hands where we can see them," a voice boomed, authoritative and urgent. Officers flooded the room, their weapons drawn but steady. Logan, still catching his breath, raised his hand slowly, his mouth twisting into something resembling pain and amusement. His crew followed suit, their bruised and battered forms barely upright. Emma and Sophia stood still, their hands raised just enough to show compliance but not submission. Their faces were unreadable, but a flicker of silent communication passed between them. They had been in worse situations, but this one required strategy. The waitress pointed toward the sisters. "They were defending themselves," she blurted out, her voice wavering. "They didn't start it." One of the officers glanced toward Logan. His expression was one of calculated hurt. "You believe that, officer?" he rasped. "Look at us. We came in here for a meal, and they jumped us." "That's a lie." The waitress stepped forward, her hands trembling. "They—" "Ma'am, step back," an officer instructed firmly, turning toward Emma and Sophia. "You two come with us." Neither sister protested as they were led outside, where the cold air pressed against their skin like an unwelcome embrace. The officers moved with efficiency, securing the scene, questioning the lingering witnesses, and ushering Logan's crew into separate vehicles. The distant hum of curious onlookers gathered beyond the police tape, their phones raised, recording every second. Inside the interrogation room, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Emma sat across from a seasoned detective, his eyes sharp with years of reading people. Sophia occupied a similar room down the hall, her posture relaxed but her mind working through every possible outcome. "You want to tell me what happened in there?" the detective asked, flipping through a thin folder, probably filled with preliminary reports. "Seems like things got a little intense." Emma held his gaze, her voice calm. "It was self-defense." "That's not what Logan and his boys are saying." Emma smirked, but there was no humor in it. "I bet they aren't." He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "They're claiming you two started it, that they walked in, and you went after them." Emma exhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Do we look like people who randomly pick fights with gang members?" The detective didn't answer immediately. He studied her, the way she sat, the way she breathed. "No," he admitted. "You don't. But that doesn't mean you aren't dangerous." A beat of silence stretched between them. "Tell me," he continued, "how do two women manage to take down 5 men, all of whom are twice their size?" Emma leaned back. "We've been trained." "Trained?" He lifted an eyebrow. "By who?" She hesitated. This was the crossroads. Reveal too much, and they risked exposing themselves. Say too little, and they'd remain under scrutiny. "Military," she answered simply. "That's all you need to know." The detective sighed, running a hand down his face. "That's not how this works." Down the hall, Sophia was facing a similar line of questioning. "You've got a background in hand-to-hand combat," her interrogator noted. "That's not exactly common." "I had a good coach," Sophia replied, offering nothing more. "They say you took down Tank like it was nothing." Sophia shrugged. He was slow. The officer leaned back, rubbing his chin. "Look, I don't doubt those guys had it coming, but Logan has friends. Powerful ones. You know how this works. The loudest voice gets heard first. And right now, that's him." She frowned, her fingers tapping lightly against the table. She had expected as much. Sure enough, as the hours passed, news spread like wildfire. By morning, local media had picked up Logan's version of events. Headlines painting Emma and Sophia as aggressors, ex-military with a violent streak. Social media was split. Some called for their arrest, while others demanded justice, calling out Logan's past crimes. Emma scrolled through the articles on her phone, jaw tightening. "They're making us the villains." Sophia peered over her shoulder. "They're trying to control the narrative." Emma inhaled deeply. "Then we take it back." Emma sat at the small kitchen table, scrolling through news articles, her jaw tightening with every misleading headline. Logan had wasted no time spinning his story, painting himself and his gang as victims. The media had picked up his version, and now social media was ablaze with heated debates. Sophia leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "We can't let this stand. We let him control the narrative, and we're done." Emma nodded, already dialing a number. "Time to call in some favors." Within hours, they were on a video call with an old friend, Daniel West, a respected investigative journalist who had spent years exposing corruption. He listened as they laid out what had happened, his expression growing more serious. "Logan's got connections," Daniel said, typing rapidly on his keyboard. "But truth still has a way of finding its way out. Send me everything you've got." Sophia sent him the details, while Emma contacted another ally, Rachel Carter, a social media strategist who knew how to turn public opinion. "We need to get ahead of this," Emma told her. "We need people to see the real story." Rachel didn't hesitate. "I'll get the right voices on this. But we need hard proof." That's when the break came. The diner's owner, frustrated with how things were being spun, handed over the full security footage from that night. It was exactly what they needed. The video showed everything: Logan and his gang initiating the confrontation, their aggression, and the moment Emma and Sophia had defended themselves. Rachel wasted no time. She edited the footage, adding captions to clarify key moments. The video went live on multiple platforms with the title, "The Truth About Logan Harrington. Who's the Real Aggressor?" Within minutes, it started gaining traction. The first wave of responses was outrage. People who had originally believed Logan's story now saw the truth unfold before their eyes. The comment sections exploded. "I can't believe the media ran with his version. This changes everything." Those women were defending themselves. How many times has Logan done this before and gotten away with it? As the video gained millions of views, news outlets that had initially framed Emma and Sophia as the aggressors scrambled to reassess their stance. Daniel published an in-depth piece exposing Logan's history, his prior arrests, his intimidation tactics, and his deep ties to local corruption. Other journalists followed, some even issuing retractions to their initial reports. Logan's world began to crumble. The once feared leader of the biker gang was now the subject of scrutiny. His supporters began to waver, distancing themselves as the evidence stacked against him. Even within his own ranks, cracks were forming. The loyalty he once commanded was faltering. In the heart of the storm, Logan sat in his dimly lit clubhouse, his phone buzzing nonstop with messages from furious allies and reporters demanding comments. His fists clenched as he watched the video play out on the screen before him. He could see it, his carefully crafted facade unraveling in real time. "We need to fix this," one of his men muttered. "Fast." Logan exhaled sharply, standing up. "No. We need to make them regret this." Meanwhile, Emma and Sophia were watching everything unfold from their apartment. The tide was turning, but they knew it wasn't over. "He won't go down without a fight," Sophia murmured, sipping her coffee. Emma nodded. "Then we make sure he has nowhere left to run." The city had never seen law enforcement move so quickly. Within hours of the new evidence circulating online, the pressure on authorities mounted. Public demand for justice reached a fever pitch, and soon, the case caught the attention of the FBI. The agency had been tracking Logan's gang for years, but now, with undeniable video proof and witness testimonies flooding in, they finally had enough to act. The morning of the raid, a convoy of unmarked SUVs and police cruisers surrounded the rundown warehouse that served as Logan's headquarters. Agents in tactical gear moved with precision, their rifles raised as they breached the entrance. The element of surprise was on their side. Logan and his crew never saw it coming. Inside, Logan was seated at a table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him, his bloodshot eyes darting across the room as he tried to make sense of the commotion outside. The heavy thud of boots on concrete echoed through the hallways, followed by the unmistakable shouts of law enforcement. Doors burst open. Commands were barked. One by one, his men were dragged out in handcuffs, some barely conscious from the previous night's drinking, others scrambling in futile attempts to flee. But there was nowhere left to run. The moment the agents entered the main room, Logan pushed back his chair, his fingers tightening into fists. He had been in plenty of fights, had clawed his way out of worse situations. But this time, there was no escape. The lead agent locked eyes with him, her expression unreadable. "Logan Harrington," she said, her voice firm. "You're under arrest." Logan exhaled sharply, the weight of reality settling in. He wasn't walking away from this one. As the cold steel of the handcuffs snapped around his wrists, he knew his reign was over. Across town, Emma and Sophia watched the live news coverage in silence. The flashing lights, the swarm of reporters, the footage of Logan being led away in cuffs. It was surreal. Sophia let out a slow breath, setting her coffee down. "It's finally happening." Emma nodded, but her expression remained measured. "It's a victory, but it's not the end." The town had spent too long under Logan's shadow, and while his arrest was a step toward justice, the scars he left behind wouldn't heal overnight. But for the first time in years, people could breathe a little easier. By afternoon, the streets were alive with relief. Strangers exchanged nods of acknowledgement. Shop owners reopened their doors with a renewed sense of security, and families gathered in the park without the looming fear of violence. The tension that had gripped the town for so long was finally loosening. At the diner, the same place where it all started, the waitress who had once trembled at the sight of Logan's gang now moved with a lightness in her step. She placed a fresh slice of pie in front of Emma and Sophia, her smile genuine. "On the house," she said, "for everything you've done." Sophia grinned. "You might regret that. We have big appetites." The waitress laughed, shaking her head. "You two gave this town hope. That's worth more than a slice of pie." As the night stretched on, news stations continued broadcasting updates. Logan was facing a long list of charges, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. His empire had crumbled. The town had reclaimed itself. Still, Emma knew the world wasn't so simple. There were always others waiting in the wings, ready to take advantage of the chaos left behind. But for now, they had won a battle that mattered. Sophia leaned back in her chair, glancing at Emma. "So what now?" Emma took a slow sip of her coffee, considering the question. "Now, we keep moving forward." For the first time in a long while, the road ahead didn't seem quite so uncertain. The evening air was crisp as Emma and Sophia walked through the quiet streets of the town, their boots echoing softly against the pavement. The town had changed in just a few days. People no longer glanced over their shoulders. Businesses that had once shuttered early now kept their doors open later, and there was a sense of cautious optimism that had been missing for years. Yet, beneath the surface, Emma could still feel the weight of uncertainty lingering. Sophia shoved her hands into her pockets. "So, are we staying? Or are we packing up and moving on?" Emma exhaled, her breath visible in the cool night. "I don't know, sophomore. We came here looking for peace, a quiet life. Didn't exactly turn out that way." Sophia let out a small chuckle. "No, it didn't. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we were meant to be here. To help." Emma glanced at her sister. "And what? We become the town's guardians. Stay and make sure no one else like Logan takes over." "Why not?" Sophia shrugged. "It's not like we don't have the skills. And look around, Emma. People are finally standing up for themselves. That's because of what we did." Emma stopped walking, turning to face her sister fully. "What we did was survive. We fought because we had to. That doesn't mean we owe this town our future." Sophia sighed, nodding slowly. "I get it. I do. But you saw their faces today. The way people looked at us, like they finally had hope. You really think we can just walk away from that?" Emma looked down the street, at the small businesses with their lights still on, the people talking in hushed voices, but with an ease that had been missing before. She wanted to say it wasn't their responsibility, that they didn't owe anyone anything. But deep down, she knew Sophia had a point. The town had learned a lesson. Silence had only allowed Logan's reign to flourish. Fear had given him power. But now, with his grip broken, people were beginning to understand that standing together was the only way forward. They walked past the diner, the very place where everything had started. Inside, the waitress who had once cowered now stood tall, chatting with customers who seemed lighter, freer. A small sign on the window read, "Under new management." The place had survived, just like the town had. "We should at least stick around long enough to make sure the change lasts," Sophia said, her voice softer now. "Not forever, just long enough." Emma smirked. "You just don't want to leave before you get another slice of that pie." Sophia grinned. "It's really good pie." Emma sighed, shaking her head. "Fine, we stay. For now. But if things go south again, I'm not making any promises." "Deal." Sophia bumped her shoulder playfully against Emma's. The town had changed, but so had they. And for the first time in a long time, staying put didn't feel like running away from something. It felt like running towards something better. The wind was gentle as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the town that had, for so long, lived in the shadow of fear. Emma and Sophia stood side by side, watching as people moved about freely, a sense of normalcy returning. They had fought battles before, some much larger, some much deadlier. But this one had been different. This time, they had fought not just for themselves, but for a town that had needed a push to remember its own strength. Emma took a slow breath, the scent of rain from earlier still clinging to the air. "You really think they'll keep standing up for themselves, even after we're gone?" Sophia gave a small smile. "I think they already are. Look at them. They're not looking over their shoulders anymore. They're talking, laughing, taking back their town. That wasn't us, Emma. That was them. We just gave them a reason to believe." Emma nodded, the weight of responsibility easing just a little. She had spent years fighting for causes larger than herself, battles waged in the shadows. This one had been different, more personal. It wasn't just about defeating Logan and his gang. It was about proving that people, when given the chance, could stand against the things that tried to break them. Sophia glanced at her sister. "We did good." "Yeah," Emma said quietly. "We did." As they turned to leave, their steps steady, unhurried, a few townspeople stopped them. The waitress from the diner, her hands no longer trembling, offered a quiet nod of thanks. The shop owner, who had once been afraid to speak up, now smiled as he swept his storefront, a silent acknowledgement of what had changed. Even the sheriff, once hesitant to act, tipped his hat in their direction. They had made a difference, but the fight wasn't over. It never really was. There would always be another town, another battle, another moment when someone had to choose between silence and action. And maybe, just maybe, someone who had heard their story would find the courage to take a stand when it mattered most. This isn't just about Emma and Sophia. It's about all of us. About what happens when good people refuse to be silent. It's about standing up, even when it's hard, even when it feels like no one else will. Because courage doesn't belong to a few. It belongs to everyone who chooses to do what's right. So share this story. Talk about it. Carry it forward. Let it remind you that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always light. There's always strength in those willing to fight for what's right. And if you ever find yourself at that crossroads, wondering if you should stand up or stay silent, remember, the world changes when people like you decide to take a stand. As the last light of day faded, Emma and Sophia walked into the evening, their path uncertain but their resolve unshaken. They knew the road ahead would be long, but they were ready. Because some battles never truly end. And as long as there was injustice, as long as there was someone who needed a reason to fight, they would be there, standing against the darkness,